The spit landed on my shoulder before I even reached the supply closet. I didn't turn around. I knew the shape of my father's disgust without looking. The way his jaw clenched, the slight flare of his nostrils, the faint metallic click of his wedding ring tapping the reception desk. "That's what happens when you settle," he said, loud enough for the morning crowd to hear. "You become invisible." I wiped the dampness off my janitor's uniform with a rag I kept in my back pocket, the same pocket where I'd folded a handwritten business plan 3 weeks earlier. He didn't know it yet, but I was already planning to own the place.
The first week as a janitor at Westbrook Tower felt like wearing someone else's skin. I was 26, college-educated, and completely broke after my startup folded. My father, Richard Hayes, worked on the 15th floor as regional sales director for a pharmaceutical company. He'd called my career pivot pathetic over Thanksgiving dinner, in front of my younger sister and my mother, who said nothing. When I told him I'd taken a job at his building, he hung up the phone. The building manager, a wiry man named Gus with a limp and a tattoo of a lighthouse on his forearm, handed me the keys to the supply closet on my first Monday. "People don't see us," he said, not unkindly, "but we see everything." The Westbrook Tower was a 12-story mixed-use building in downtown Portland, with offices on floors 6 through 12, apartments below, and a coffee shop on the ground level. The marble lobby gleamed under pendant lights. The tenants were lawyers, consultants, small tech firms. My father's company occupied the entire 15th floor. I worked the early shift, 6 to 2, mopping hallways and emptying trash before most people arrived. On my third day, I found a crumpled receipt near the elevator. It was from a property management firm, dated 2 months prior, outlining a potential sale of Westbrook Tower. The building's owner, an elderly man named Mr. Callahan, was considering retirement. I smoothed the receipt flat and tucked it into my notebook. That night, I sat in my studio apartment with a cup of instant coffee and sketched a plan on graph paper. If I could secure a loan, rally investors, and move fast, I could buy the building before it went to a corporate bidder. It sounded insane. I had $1,200 in savings and a father who thought I was a waste of oxygen. The next morning, I arrived at 5:30 to scrub the coffee shop's tile floor. The owner, a woman named Lena with silver-streaked hair and a habit of humming show tunes, unlocked the door early and handed me a scone. "You're the one with the mean dad, right?" she asked. I paused mid-mop. "How'd you know?" She shrugged. "I've worked here 9 years. I see things." Lena told me she'd watched my father berate a delivery driver the previous week over a misplaced package. "He's got a reputation," she said, "but you don't." She refilled my coffee without asking and told me Mr. Callahan came in every Wednesday at 7 for black coffee and a blueberry muffin. I started timing my shifts to overlap with Mr. Callahan's visits. He was 82, thin as a rake, with kind eyes and a plaid scarf he wore even in mild weather. He always nodded at me. On the second Wednesday, I held the door open for him. "Thank you, son," he said, and patted my arm. The third Wednesday, I asked if he needed help carrying his coffee upstairs to his office. He smiled. "I don't have an office anymore. Just like coming back to see the old place." We talked for 20 minutes. He told me he'd built Westbrook Tower in 1987 with money from a logging business his father started. "It's been good to me," he said, "but I'm tired." I didn't pitch him that day. I just listened. He told me about his late wife, about the mural she had painted in the building's basement, a forest scene that no one had looked at in years. I promised to clean it up. That weekend, I spent 6 hours in the basement with a bucket of soapy water and a sponge, wiping decades of grime off a painting of Douglas firs and a winding creek. When Mr. Callahan came in the following Wednesday, I brought him downstairs. He stood in front of the mural for a long time, silent. Then he asked, "Why'd you do this?" I told him the truth, because it deserved to be seen. He invited me to lunch the next day. Over sandwiches at a deli 2 blocks away, I told him about my startup, my failure, my plan. I didn't sugarcoat it. I had no capital, no co-signers, and a father who'd made it clear he thought I was a disgrace. But I had a vision. Turn Westbrook Tower into a community hub. Keep rents affordable for small businesses. Convert the empty 6th floor into co-working spaces. Mr. Callahan listened, asked questions, and then said something I didn't expect. I've had 3 offers from developers. They want to gut the place, double the rents, kick out half the tenants. I've been stalling because it doesn't feel right. He looked at me. You remind me of myself at your age. Hungry, but not cruel. He didn't offer me to sell the building that day, but he gave me something better, access. He introduced me to his accountant, a sharp woman named Diane, who reviewed my financials and didn't laugh. She laid out a path: find angel investors, apply for a community development loan, prove I could manage the property. It would take months, maybe a year. I'd need to stay at the janitor job, keep my head down, and build credibility. I agreed. That night, I called my sister Emma, the only family member still speaking to me. She wired me $500 and told me to keep going. The building became my classroom. I learned every tenant's schedule, every quirk of the plumbing, every complaint Gus fielded about the heating system. I fixed a leaking faucet in the 3rd floor break room with a YouTube tutorial and a wrench I bought at a hardware store. I started a suggestion box in the lobby and actually responded to submissions. Tenants began to recognize me. A graphic designer named Marco started leaving me leftover pizza. A lawyer named Judith asked if I'd help her move a filing cabinet. I said yes to everything. My father, meanwhile, ignored me. He walked past me in the lobby as if I were wallpaper. Then came the morning he spat on my uniform. I'd been replacing a burnt-out light bulb near the elevators when he arrived with 2 colleagues, both men in tailored suits. He saw me, stopped mid-sentence, and spat. The colleagues looked uncomfortable. One of them muttered something about being late to a meeting. My father leaned in close, his breath sharp with coffee. "You're an embarrassment," he hissed. "You think this is a job? This is what people do when they've given up." I met his eyes. "I'm not giving up," I said quietly. He laughed, a short, ugly sound, and walked away. I stood there holding the light bulb, my chest tight, my hands steady. That night, I called Diane and asked how soon we could move.
Diane's office was a converted loft above a bookstore, crammed with filing cabinets and a whiteboard covered in financial projections. She poured me a mug of herbal tea and slid a folder across the desk. "Mr. Callahan's willing to sell or finance part of the deal," she said, "but you'll still need $200,000 up front." My stomach dropped. I'd managed to save $3,000 over the past 2 months by picking up weekend shifts at a grocery store. $200,000 felt like the moon. Diane wasn't finished. She'd identified a community development financial institution that specialized in loans for first-time commercial buyers in underserved areas. Westbrook Tower qualified because it housed several minority-owned businesses and offered below-market rents. The application required a detailed business plan, letters of support from tenants, and proof of management experience. I had none of the latter. "So we get creative," Diane said. She suggested I propose a partnership structure. I'd bring operational expertise and tenant relationships. Mr. Callahan would retain a small equity stake and serve as an advisor. It would lower the upfront capital requirement and give me credibility. I spent the next month living in spreadsheets. I tracked every repair request, every lease renewal, every complaint. I documented how much the building saved by keeping tenants long-term versus churning them for higher rents. I interviewed small business owners in the building, asked what they needed, and built those needs into my plan. Flexible lease terms, shared conference rooms, a revamped lobby with better Wi-Fi. Marco, the graphic designer, offered to design a pitch deck in exchange for free coffee for a year. I agreed. Judith, the lawyer, reviewed my contracts pro bono. "You're actually doing this," she said, half impressed, half skeptical. The hardest part was the letters of support. I needed at least 10 tenants to vouch for me in writing. Some were easy. Lena from the coffee shop wrote 2 pages about how I'd unclogged her sink at midnight during a holiday rush. Others were harder. A tech startup on the 9th floor barely knew me. I knocked on their door one afternoon, introduced myself, and asked what problems they faced. The founder, a woman named Priya, complained about the lack of bike storage. I spent a weekend clearing out a corner of the basement and installing racks I bought on Craigslist. Priya wrote me a letter. My father remained oblivious. He never worked late, never lingered in the lobby, never looked at the suggestion box I'd installed. He existed in a bubble of executive detachment, arriving at 8:50 and leaving at 5 on the dot. Once I saw him berate a receptionist for putting the wrong date on a memo. She was close to tears. I walked past with a trash bag, invisible. That night, I added a line to my business plan. Respect for all tenants and staff will be a core operational value. In early April, Diane and I submitted the loan application. The waiting period was 6 weeks. I kept working, kept cleaning, kept my head down. My father's company, meanwhile, started having problems. I overheard snippets of conversation in the elevator. A merger falling through, layoffs rumored, someone mentioning restructuring. I didn't think much of it. My focus was on the building, on the tenants, on proving I could do this. Then Mr. Callahan called me into his apartment on the 5th floor. He lived in a 2-bedroom unit with hardwood floors and a view of the river. Photographs covered the walls. His wife at the mural, his daughters at college graduations, his grandchildren at birthday parties. He gestured for me to sit. "The loan came through," he said. "Diane called me this morning." My heart stuttered. He handed me a glass of water and smiled. "You'll need to close in 60 days. Can you manage that?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. He continued, "There's one condition. I want to stay involved for the first year. Not as an owner, but as a mentor. This building's been my life. I want to see it thrive." We shook hands. That handshake felt heavier than any contract I'd ever signed. Walking back downstairs, I passed my father in the lobby. He was on his phone, laughing at something, oblivious. I wanted to tell him. I wanted to see his face twist in disbelief. But I didn't. I had 60 days to close and I needed to focus. The next morning I met with Diane to finalize paperwork. She'd structured the deal brilliantly. The community loan covered 60%, Mr. Callahan seller-financed 30%, and I cobbled together the remaining 10% through a combination of personal savings, a small investment from Emma, and a microloan from a nonprofit that supported young entrepreneurs. The closing process was a gauntlet of inspections, appraisals, and legal reviews. I learned more about commercial real estate in 2 months than I'd learned in 4 years of business school. I discovered a 10-year-old lien on the building that had to be cleared, a zoning issue with the basement, and a clause in one lease that could have torpedoed the whole deal. Judith helped me navigate it. Marco designed a new logo for the building. Lena threw me an impromptu celebration at the coffee shop, complete with a cake that said, "Future Landlord" in blue frosting. My father wasn't there. He was never there. June 23rd was closing day. I wore a button-down shirt I'd ironed the night before and met Diane, Mr. Callahan, and a notary at a conference room in a law office downtown. The paperwork took 3 hours. I signed my name so many times my hand cramped. When the notary stamped the final document, Mr. Callahan clasped my shoulder. "You're a building owner now. Don't screw it up." I promised I wouldn't. We walked out into bright summer sunlight. I felt weightless, untethered, terrified, exhilarated. That evening, I returned to Westbrook Tower, walked through the lobby I'd mopped 100 times, and stood in front of the mural in the basement. I thought about my father's spit on my shoulder, his voice calling me invisible. I thought about every tenant who'd given me a chance. I thought about what came next. The next morning, I arrived at 6 as usual, but this time I went to Gus's office first. He looked up from his coffee, surprised. "You're early," he said. I told him about the purchase. He blinked, set down his mug, and laughed, a deep, genuine laugh that echoed in the small room. "You bought the building?" I nodded. He stood, shook my hand, and said, "You're going to need a new uniform." I smiled. "I'm keeping this one." Over the next 2 weeks, I met with every tenant to introduce myself as the new owner. Most were supportive. A few were skeptical. One tenant, a hedge fund manager on the 11th floor, asked bluntly, "What makes you think you can do this?" I told him the truth. "I've been doing it for 6 months. You just didn't notice." The real test came when I had to address my father's company. Their lease was up for renewal in 3 months. Standard procedure would have been to send a form letter. Instead, I scheduled a meeting with their office manager, a brisk woman named Patricia, who'd worked there for 15 years.
She arrived at my new office, a converted storage room on the second floor, with a leather portfolio and a skeptical expression. I offered her coffee. She declined. "I'll be direct," she said. "Your father told us you bought the building. He's not happy." I kept my face neutral. "This is a business decision, not a personal one. I'd like to discuss your lease renewal." Patricia relaxed slightly. We talked for 40 minutes about their needs, their concerns, their budget. I offered a modest rent increase, well below market rate, in exchange for a 3-year commitment. She agreed to take it to her bosses. That evening, my father called me for the first time in 9 months. "You're making a mistake," he said. No preamble, no greeting. "You're in your head." I leaned back in my chair, looked out at the city lights and said, "I appreciate your concern, but the building's doing fine." He scoffed. "You think owning a building makes you successful. You're still just the janitor in a nicer shirt." I felt the old tightness in my chest, the old urge to defend myself, to prove him wrong. Instead, I said, "I need to go. Have a good night, Dad." I hung up. It wasn't satisfying, it wasn't cinematic, but it was enough.
The first crisis hit in August. The building's HVAC system, ancient and temperamental, failed during a heat wave. Tenants flooded my inbox with complaints. My father's company, predictably, was the loudest. Patricia called my cell at 7 in the morning. "We have clients coming in today," she said, her voice tight. "We can't meet in a sauna." I'd already called 2 repair companies. Both quoted me $10,000 and a 2-week wait. I told Patricia I'd handle it. Gus and I spent the day in the mechanical room, troubleshooting. The system wasn't dead, just exhausted. A clogged filter, a blown fuse, a refrigerant leak. We juried a temporary fix with parts from a hardware store and sheer stubbornness. By 4 o'clock, cool air was blowing through the vents. I sent a building-wide email apologizing for the disruption and outlining a plan to replace the HVAC system over the next 6 months. Most tenants responded with understanding. My father's office didn't respond at all. The HVAC crisis taught me something important. Ownership wasn't about control, it was about showing up. I started hosting monthly tenant meetings in the lobby, standing in front of the coffee shop with a microphone and a legal pad, answering questions about maintenance schedules and lease terms. Attendance was sparse at first, maybe 8 or 9 people, but it grew. By October, we had 30 tenants in attendance, including Priya from the tech startup and Marco, who live-tweeted the meetings with increasingly affectionate commentary. My father never came, but Patricia did. She sat in the back, arms crossed, listening. In late September, I got a call from Diane. My father's company was in trouble. The merger that fell through had triggered a cascade of problems: lost contracts, executive departures, a CFO under investigation for embezzlement. They'd missed their last rent payment. Patricia called me the next day, apologetic. "We're working on it," she said, "but it might take another month." I could have pressed. I could have leveraged their vulnerability, hiked the rent, or refused to renew their lease. Instead, I offered a payment plan. Patricia sounded surprised. "Why?" she asked. "Because you're a good tenant," I said, "and I'm not interested in punishing people for things outside their control." My father found out about the payment plan and exploded. He showed up at my office unannounced, his face red, his voice loud enough to echo down the hallway. "You think you're being noble?" he shouted. "You're being weak. This is business. You don't give people breaks." I stood up, kept my voice level. "This is my building," I said, "and I run it my way." He leaned over my desk. "You're going to fail," he said, "and when you do, don't come crying to me." I met his eyes. "I won't," I said. He left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. That night, I sat in the basement by the mural, my phone off, my head in my hands. I wasn't sure if I was doing the right thing. The payment plan was generous, maybe too generous, but I believed in it. I believed that treating people with dignity, even when they didn't deserve it, was worth the risk. Emma called me later that week. She'd heard about the confrontation from a mutual friend. "You're allowed to be angry at him," she said. "I am," I replied, "but I'm also trying to build something different." She was quiet for a moment. "I'm proud of you," she said. It helped. By November, the building was thriving. The 6th-floor co-working space opened to immediate demand.
I'd converted 4 empty offices into shared desks, a conference room, and a small kitchenette. Freelancers and remote workers rented daily or monthly passes. Revenue exceeded projections by 20%. Diane sent me a congratulatory email with a champagne emoji. Mr. Callahan stopped by for coffee and told me I was doing better than he'd expected. "You've got a knack for this," he said. I thanked him, still half convinced I'd wake up and find it was all a dream. Then the notice came. My father's company was shutting down their Portland office. The decision was abrupt, effective January 1st. They'd be terminating their lease early. Patricia called me sounding exhausted. "It's not personal," she said. "The company's consolidating. Most of the staff is being let go." I asked if my father was affected. She hesitated. "He's being transferred to a smaller role in Seattle. He's not taking it well." I felt a flicker of something, not satisfaction, not pity, but something close to sadness. "I'm sorry," I said. She thanked me for the payment plan and hung up. The 15th floor sat empty by mid-December. I walked through it one afternoon, noting the abandoned desks, the leftover office supplies, the whiteboard still covered in sales projections. My father had spent a decade in this space, building a career he was proud of. Now it was gone, and he was gone, and I was the one left standing. I didn't feel triumphant, I felt tired. That night, I drafted a plan to convert the 15th floor into affordable housing units for young professionals. It would take months, maybe a year, but it felt right. I sent the plan to Mr. Callahan. He replied within an hour. "Do it." Christmas came and went. I spent it with Emma and her partner, eating takeout and watching old movies. My mother called, briefly, to say she was proud of me. My father didn't call. In early January, I received a letter from Patricia. It was handwritten, on personal stationery. She thanked me for my kindness during a difficult time and told me that several employees, including herself, had found new jobs. "Your father's struggling," she wrote, "but that's not your responsibility." She signed off with a P.S. "You're a good person. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." The building entered the new year with full occupancy. I hired Gus as head of operations and brought on a part-time assistant to handle leasing inquiries. I still mopped floors sometimes, early in the morning before anyone arrived, because it helped me think. One morning in late January, I was cleaning the lobby when my father walked in. He looked older, smaller, his suit slightly rumpled. He stopped when he saw me. We stared at each other. Finally, he said, "I need to talk to you." I set down the mop. "About what?" He gestured to the coffee shop. "Can we sit?" I hesitated, then nodded. We sat across from each other, two strangers with the same last name. He ordered black coffee. I didn't order anything.
My father didn't apologize. He started with logistics. He'd been laid off from the Seattle position after 3 weeks. The company was dissolving, swallowed by a larger competitor. His severance was modest. He was 58, too young to retire, too experienced to start over easily. "I'm looking for work," he said, his voice flat. "But it's tough." I sipped Lena's coffee, which she'd brought over without asking, and waited. He continued. "I know you own this building now. I know you're doing well. I wanted to, I don't know, tell you that." I set down my cup. "Why are you here, Dad?" He looked at his hands. "Because I don't know where else to go." The honesty startled me. My father had always been a fortress, impenetrable, self-assured, convinced of his own rightness. Now he looked like a man whose foundation had crumbled. I asked, "What do you want from me?" He shook his head. "Nothing. I just thought, maybe you'd understand. You've been at the bottom. You know what it's like." I felt a surge of anger so sharp it took my breath away. "I was at the bottom because you put me there," I said, my voice low. "You called me pathetic. You spat on me. You told me I was invisible." He flinched. "I was angry. You were cruel," I said, "and you were wrong." We sat in silence. Lena refilled his coffee without comment. Finally, I said, "I'm not going to help you find a job. I'm not going to give you money, but I'm not going to kick you while you're down either." He looked up, confused. I continued, "You need to figure out your own path.
But if you ever want to understand what I built here, why it matters, you're welcome to come by. Not as my father, as someone who wants to learn." He didn't respond. He finished his coffee, left a $5 bill on the table, and walked out. I didn't expect to see him again. But he came back. 2 days later, mid-morning, he appeared in the lobby and asked if he could attend the next tenant meeting. I was so surprised I almost said no. Instead, I told him the meeting was Thursday at 6. He nodded and left. Thursday came. My father sat in the back row, the same spot Patricia used to occupy. I ran the meeting as usual. Updates on the HVAC replacement, a discussion about adding bike racks on the ground floor, a Q&A about lease renewals. He didn't speak. He just watched. Afterward, he approached me cautiously. "You're good at this," he said. "You listen." It wasn't much, but it was something. Over the next month, he attended 3 more meetings. He started asking questions about tenant retention strategies, about maintenance budgets, about how I balanced compassion with financial sustainability. I answered honestly. Once, he asked if he could help with a project. I assigned him to assist Gus with organizing the basement storage area. He showed up on time, worked without complaint, and didn't mention his former executive title. Gus told me later, "Your dad's not bad when he keeps his mouth shut." I laughed despite myself. In March, I converted the 15th floor into 6 studio apartments with shared common space. The renovation took longer than expected and cost more than budgeted, but the results were worth it. The units were small but thoughtfully designed: Murphy beds, built-in desks, large windows overlooking the river. I priced them below market rate and prioritized applicants who worked in creative or service industries. Marco was the first tenant. "You're giving me a place I can actually afford," he said, visibly moved. "Thank you." Priya took the second unit. Within 2 weeks, all 6 were occupied. My father asked if he could see the units. I gave him a tour. He walked through slowly, noting the details: the reclaimed wood shelving, the energy-efficient appliances, the communal lounge with a bookshelf and board games. When we finished, he said, "This is what you wanted to build, isn't it? A place where people feel valued." I nodded. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I'm sorry." I turned to him. His face was drawn, his eyes tired. "I'm sorry for how I treated you," he continued. "I thought success meant money and titles. I didn't understand that it could mean this." He gestured to the building around us. I was wrong. It wasn't a perfect apology. It didn't erase the years of contempt, the spit on my shoulder, the voice calling me pathetic, but it was real. I said, "I appreciate that." He nodded, swallowed hard. "Can I ask you something?" I waited. "Do you think I could work here?" The question hung in the air. I considered it. My father had no property management experience, no background in tenant relations, no track record of humility. But he'd shown up. He'd listened. He'd changed, even if only slightly. I said, "We need someone to handle administrative work, scheduling repairs, processing lease applications, fielding tenant inquiries. It's not glamorous. It pays $15 an hour." He met my eyes. "I'll take it." He started the following Monday. Gus trained him on the systems. I kept my distance, letting him prove himself without my interference. He made mistakes, accidentally double-booked a conference room, misrouted a maintenance request, but he learned. Tenants started recognizing him. Lena said he'd been polite when he picked up coffee. Marco mentioned he'd helped carry furniture. Priya told me, "Your dad's actually pretty helpful." I didn't know how to process it. The man I'd known, the man who spat on me, was becoming someone else, someone quieter, humbler, more careful. One evening in late April, I stayed late to review budget projections. My father knocked on my office door. "Got a minute?" he asked. I gestured for him to sit. He looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with a pen. "I wanted to ask," he said slowly, "if you'd consider promoting me. Not to anything big, just more responsibility. I know I have to earn it, but I want to try." I leaned back in my chair. "Why?" He looked at me. "Because I want to be part of what you're building, and because I want you to be proud of me." The words hit harder than I expected. I said, "I'll think about it." Over the next 2 months, I watched him closely. He took initiative, organized a tenant appreciation event, negotiated a better rate with a cleaning supplier, mediated a noise complaint between two tenants without escalating it to me. He was good at the work. Not perfect, but good. In June, I promoted him to assistant property manager. His salary increased. His responsibilities expanded. He thanked me with a handshake, not a hug, not a grand gesture, just a quiet acknowledgement. That night, Emma called. "Mom told me Dad's working for you," she said. "How's that going?" I thought about it. "Honestly, it's weird, but it's not terrible." She laughed. Progress. The building celebrated its one-year anniversary under my ownership with a summer barbecue in the lobby. Tenants brought food. Gus manned the grill. Mr. Callahan gave a short speech praising the community we'd built. My father stood to the side, helping Marco set up speakers for music. I watched him. This man I'd hated and feared and pitied, he was still my father. He was still flawed, but he was trying. When the party wound down, he approached me. "Thank you," he said, "for giving me a chance." I nodded. "Don't waste it," I replied. He smiled, a small, real smile. "I won't," he said, and for the first time, I believed him.
By fall, the building had become something I'd never imagined, a genuine community. Tenants knew each other's names. The coffee shop hosted open mic nights. The co-working space buzzed with collaboration. I'd receive emails thanking me for creating a place that feels like home. My father, to my surprise, became a fixture. He knew every tenant's lease terms, every maintenance schedule, every quirk of the building's systems. He was still quiet, still careful, but he'd earned respect. Gus told me once, "He's not the guy you described." "No," I agreed, "he's not." In October, I received an offer from a commercial real estate firm. They wanted to buy Westbrook Tower for triple what I'd paid. The offer was generous, tempting, life-changing. I could have sold, taken the profit, started over somewhere new. Instead, I declined. Diane asked why. I told her, because this place isn't about money. It's about what we've built. She smiled. "You sound like Mr. Callahan." I took that as a compliment. That same month, my father asked if we could have dinner. Not at the building, not at a meeting, just the two of us, at a restaurant. I agreed. We met at a quiet Italian place downtown. Over pasta and bread, we talked. Not about the building, not about work, but about life. He told me about his childhood, growing up poor, terrified of failing, convinced that success meant dominance. "I thought if I wasn't the strongest person in the room, I'd disappear," he said. I told him about my startup, the shame of failing, the fear of becoming invisible. "I thought if I didn't prove myself, I'd never matter," I said. We realized, sitting there, that we'd been fighting the same fear, just in different ways. He asked about my plans for the building. I told him about the idea I'd been developing, converting the empty retail space on the ground floor into a community center, free resources for job seekers, small business workshops, a lending library. "It won't make money," I said, "but it'll make a difference." He nodded slowly. "You're a better person than I ever was," he said. I shook my head. I just had better examples. I thought of Lena, Gus, Mr. Callahan, Diane, all the people who'd shown me what kindness looked like. My father paid the check. As we walked out, he said, "I'm proud of you. I should have said that a long time ago." I stopped, turned to face him. "Thank you," I said, and I meant it. The community center opened in December, just before the holidays. Emma flew in for the ribbon cutting. Mr. Callahan gave another speech. Tenants donated books, computers, furniture. My father helped set up the space, arranging chairs and testing the Wi-Fi. During the opening reception, a young woman approached me. She was maybe 23, nervous, holding a resume. "I heard you offer job search help," she said. I nodded. "We do. Come back tomorrow and we'll get you started." She smiled, relieved. "Thank you. This means a lot." Watching her leave, I thought about the receipt I'd found 2 years earlier, the crumpled paper that started everything. I thought about the spit on my shoulder, the nights I'd questioned whether I was capable, the slow, painful process of proving myself. I thought about how success wasn't a single moment. It was 1,000 small choices to show up, to care, to build something worth keeping. Emma found me later, standing by the mural in the basement. She linked her arm through mine.
"You did it," she said. "You actually did it." I looked at the painting. The forest my father's late stepmother had created, the creek winding through the trees. "We did it," I corrected. "All of us." She squeezed her arm. "He's changed, you know, Dad. I never thought I'd see it." I nodded. "People can change, if they want to." She asked, "Do you forgive him?" I thought about it. Forgiveness felt too simple, too neat. What I felt was more complicated, a mix of acceptance, caution, and tentative hope. "I'm working on it," I said. She smiled. "That's enough." Spring arrived, bringing renewal to the building and the city. The 15th floor was fully leased. The community center served over 100 people in its first 3 months. My father settled into his role. No longer the executive he'd been, but something quieter and, I thought, more genuine. One morning, he knocked on my office door with 2 cups of coffee. "Got a minute?" he asked. I gestured for him to sit. He handed me a folder. Inside was a handwritten letter. "I've been thinking," he said, "about what I could contribute. I don't have your vision or your patience, but I have connections, people I've worked with over the years. I thought maybe I could help with fundraising for the community center." I looked at the letter. It outlined potential donors, grant opportunities, partnership ideas. It was thoughtful, detailed, sincere. "This is good," I said. He shrugged. "I want to be useful." I met his eyes. "You already are," I said. He nodded, a flicker of something, relief maybe, crossing his face. The building's 2nd anniversary arrived in June. We hosted another barbecue, bigger this time, with live music and a raffle. Mr. Callahan brought his grandchildren. Lena debuted a new pastry named the Westbrook Special. Gus gave a toast about perseverance and community. My father stood with me, watching the crowd. "You know," he said, "I used to think buildings were just structures, steel and concrete, but you've turned this place into something alive." I smiled. That was always the point. He looked at me. "I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. I thought about the man who'd spat on my uniform, the man who'd called me invisible. That man was gone, or at least transformed. In his place was someone quieter, more careful, still learning. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was real, and that was enough." Later that night, after the party wound down, I walked through the building alone. The lobby was clean, the lights warm, the air cool. I passed the coffee shop, the co-working space, the community center. I stopped at the basement mural, traced my fingers along the painted trees. I thought about the question my father had asked at dinner months earlier. "What does success look like to you?" I hadn't had an answer then, but I do now. Success looked like this: a building full of people who felt seen, who felt valued, who felt like they belonged. Success was the woman with the resume, the tenant who thanked me for listening, the father who'd learned to apologize. Success was choosing, every single day, to build something kinder than what came before. I climbed the stairs to my apartment on the 3rd floor. Emma had left a note on my counter. "Proud of you, little brother." I smiled, set the note aside, and looked out at the city lights. Tomorrow, I'd wake up early, check the maintenance logs, meet with Diane about expanding the co-working space, and probably mop a floor or 2. Tomorrow, my father would arrive on time, make coffee, and help tenants with their questions. Tomorrow, the building would hum with life. Imperfect, messy, beautiful life. And I'd be right here, doing the work, showing up, proving that sometimes the lowest place is exactly where you need to start to build something extraordinary. The building was mine, but more than that, it was ours, and that made all the difference.